ಯೂಸ್ ಟು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಗೆ ಬನ್ನಿ. ಇಂದಿನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸಗಳನ್ನು ಏಕಾಗ್ರಚಿತ್ತದಿಂದ ಶಾಂತ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಿಂದ ಮಾಡಿ ಮುಗಿಸುವ ಶಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡಲು, ಕಲಿತ ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನು ಜ್ಞಾಪಕದಲ್ಲಿಟ್ಟುಕೊಳ್ಳುವ ಶಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡಲು, ಜ್ಞಾಪಕದಲ್ಲಿರುವ ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಬರೆಯುವ ಬುದ್ಧಿಶಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡಲು ಇಷ್ಟ ದೇವತೆಗೆ, ಗುರು ಹಿರಿಯರಿಗೆ, ಕುಲದೇವರಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆಯನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿ. ಟೇಕ್ ಡೀಪ್ ಬ್ರೆತ್ಸ್. Yes, good morning, my dear students. In the previous class, we collected some standard angles of 15 degree, 75 degree, even 22.5 degree we studied. Okay, let us continue with the definitions of the inverse trigonometric functions. I think it's chapter 2. Inverse trigonometric functions. Trigonometric functions. Now the question I raised in the beginning in my previous class that these particular inverse functions, suppose that sine is a function, it's a domain and codomain. If you go on writing, you studied already allied angles, we refreshed. So if I take 0 degree and all real angles, say real angles x or theta, this is real values. 0 degree, suppose that I take 30 degree, whatever angles we now will try to write. 45 degree, you take 60 degree, continue with allied angle, 120 degree, 135 degree, 90 degree, so on. And sine 0 degree, you know that the value is 0. Definite value. Sine 30 degree is 1 by 2. Sine 45 degree is 1 by root 2. Sine 60 degree is root 3 by 2. We just study what is the condition for sine 120 degree. Sine 120 degree. What is the value of sine 120 degree in the allied angle? You can write as sine 180 degree minus 60 degree. Means what? In the second quadrant, allied angles, you recall you studied allied angles, related angles. In the second quadrant, 180 minus theta, ASTC rule. ASTC rule, sine and cosec are positive and even multiple of 90 degree, therefore you can take it as sine 60 degree. We discussed in our previous class, it will give you the value root 3 by 2. Means sine 120 degree is equal to sine 60 degree is equal to root 3 by 2. Even sine 120 degree is also root 3 by 2. What is sine 135 degree? If you take sine 135 degree, 135 degree, you can write it as sine 180 minus 45 degree. What do you get here? Sine 180 minus 45 degree. Sine 180 minus 45 degree. Second quadrant again, sine remains sine only, positive, therefore you will get sine 45 degree and you will get what? 1 by root 2. Means 1 by root 2. See the trigonometric functions for the existence of inverse sine function. Inverse sine function. This is sine function. The function must be 1, 1 and on 2. Now the question is does the trigonometric function exist? It is a function. You can write like this. It is a function. Sine is a function from any real angle theta to a real number. It is a function, no doubt. Is it 1, 1 on 2? No, it is not 1, 1 because for 1, 1 different elements of the domain should have different images. Observe, this 45 degree and 135 degree have got same image. 60 degree and 120 degree have got same image. And then when you take the inverse of it, you observe, I will take what? I will take real values here, theta here, because the domain and codomain is to be interchanged to get inverse sine function. You will get 0 here, 1 by 2, then 1 by root 2, then I will take root 3 by 2, and the inverse image of 0 is 0 only. Inverse image of 1 by 2 will have two values. That is 30 degree. Inverse image of 1 by root 2 is 45 degree. Inverse image of sine inverse is it is also 135 degree. Observe, root 3 by 2. Inverse sine of root 3 by 2 is 60 degree as well as 120 degree. Observe, what is the condition for existence of the function? Every element of the domain should have unique image. No element of the domain should have two or more images. Now this second condition fails. Therefore, strictly speaking, inverse trigonometric function does not exist. Then how to learn this inverse trigonometric function? Strictly speaking, it is impossible. Good morning. Rani, good morning. You send your name. I don't know your name. Okay. See, inverse sine function, strictly speaking, does not exist because what are the two conditions to call a function? Every element of the domain should have only one image. This is pre-image, this is image. But 1 by root 2 has got two images. Condition fails. Because trigonometric functions are periodic functions. Means after every 360 degree, same values will repeat again and again. Same values will repeat again and again. Therefore, inverse trigonometric functions are periodic functions. And these allied angles will have the same value. This 60 degree and 120 degree are allied angles. 45 degree, 135 degree will have allied angles. For every 360 degree, same values will again and again repeat. Therefore, trigonometric function, strictly speaking, trigonometric function, inverse trigonometric function does not exist. This you understand first. Inverse trigonometric function, strictly speaking, trigonometric functions does not exist. Does not exist. Then what to do? To define inverse trigonometric function, what mathematicians did is, they restricted the domain and the codomain under conditions. What are the conditions? See, this inverse sine function exists only if the domain and range is restricted. Let us restrict it and try to define inverse sine function. You will understand it. Inverse sine function means what? By restricting the domain. See, we will define inverse sine function with restriction definition. If sine theta has got a value k, Then inverse sine function, inverse sine function, inverse sine function exists, and is represented as sine inverse function if and only if IFF, right? Theta lies between minus pi by 2 is less than or equal to theta, theta is less than or equal to pi by 2. You can understand the meaning of it. It lies in this range. Suppose this is our quadrant, right? This is first, second, third, fourth. Minus pi by 2 means here, from here to here, first and fourth quadrant. If the value is present and the value of sine inverse, or even you can take the value of k lie between minus 1 and plus 1 is the definition of inverse sine function. Now if you check it now, if you take the values between minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2, let us check. Just if you study one example, you can understand all other examples. This is inverse sine function at interchange domain and codomain. Here it is theta, and this is inverse sine function if you take the values only in first and fourth quadrant. Let me take 0 degree, right? 0 degree, 30 degree, then you take a 45 degree, then you take a 60 degree. You can't cross. These are the prohibited areas. If it comes to the second quadrant, it will not be 1, 1. If you come to the fourth quadrant, third quadrant, it will not be 1, 1. It will be 1, 1 and on 2 only if it is present in first and fourth quadrant. If I take minus 30 degree, minus 45 degree, minus 60 degree, right? And what is sine 0 is 0. What is sine 30 is 1 by 2. What is sine 45 is 1 by root 2. What is sine 60 is root 3 by 2. What is sine minus theta? Sine minus theta is minus sine theta. Then you get minus 1 by 2 is different from plus 1 by 2. Sine minus 45 is minus 1 by root 2. Sine minus 60 minus root 3 by 2. Observe. Here, under these conditions, when theta lies between minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2 and the value of k lies between minus 1 and plus 1, then only you can define inverse sine function. Otherwise, inverse sine function cannot be 1, 1 and on 2. Good morning. Okay. Chandana and Deepthi. Yes, no problem. Can you hear me? Listen to me. Understood? What is the definition of inverse sine function? Strictly speaking, no inverse trigonometric function exists because trigonometric functions are periodic functions. After every 360 degree, same angles will go on repeating. Therefore, it cannot be 1, 1. However, you can define inverse trigonometric function by restricting the domain and the range. Now, what is the domain here? Domain becomes, in this case, domain becomes sine inverse. This is sine function, right? This is sine function, sine inverse function. Means domain will be this will be range. The range will lie between minus 1 and plus 1. Domain becomes theta. Therefore, inverse sine function can be defined. If sine theta is equal to k, then inverse sine function exists and is represented as sine inverse if and only if IFF theta lies between minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2 and the k range lies between minus 1 to plus 1. This is the definition of inverse sine function. Similarly, by restricting the domain and codomain, you can go on defining all the 6 inverse trigonometric functions Let us take a second one, definition of cos. If a cos theta is equal to k, now you check the cos values. See, cos values, let me take theta first. This Venn diagram method will help you to understand cosine function. Now you tell me this is cos function. Then we'll go theta. Here the value is a real number. If you take 0, tell me the values of standard angles. 30 degree, 60 degree, okay, 45 degree. Just check it before we define inverse, domain and range of inverse cosine function. I will take 120 degree. I will take 135 degree. Let us check for few more values. You will understand the meaning of, first of all, you have to understand the concept, why it is restricted. Don't byhead the restrictions. You understand it, 135 degree. Then you can take 150 degree. Then you can take minus 30 degree, minus 45 degree. You take minus 60 degree. Then you can take 90 degree, sine 90 degree. I'll write here. What is the value of sine 0? Sorry, cos 0. Cos 0 is 1. Cos 30, root 3 by 2. Observe. Cos 60, 1 by 2. Cos 45, 1 by root 2. Let us check the value of what is cos 120 allied angle. Allied angle. Okay. Allied angle. Cos 180 minus theta, second quadrant, observe. Cos 180 minus 60 degree. In the second quadrant, according to ASTC rule, check. ASTC rule. What happens to the cos? Only sine and cosec are positive, but cos is negative. Therefore, you write here minus cos 60 degree. Therefore, value of it will be minus 1 by 2. No problem. Minus 1 by 2. Cos 120, second quadrant, minus 1 by 2. Different value than plus 1 by 2. Cos 135 degree. Similarly, cos 135 degree, its complementary angle can be done as 180 minus 45. Right? You will get minus cos 45 degree because in the second quadrant, its value will be minus 1 by root 2. Minus 1 by root 2. No problem. It will not disturb the 1-1s. 1-1s will continue because plus 1 by root 2 is different from minus 1 by root 2. Cos 150 degree. Cos 150 degree. How do you write allied angle? Write as 180 cos 180 minus 30 degree. Right? Second quadrant cos even multiple. What happens? Cos remains cos only. You will get minus cos 30 degree. Minus cos 30 degree is minus root 3 by 2. No problem. It will not also disturb 1 by 2. Okay. What is cos 90 is? Cos 90 is 0. Cos 90 is 0. Now what is cos minus 30? If you take cos, observe, cos, what is cos minus theta is? Cos theta. Okay. Cos minus theta is cos theta. Therefore, if I take cos minus 30, what happens? What is cos minus theta is cos theta? You will get what? Cos 30. Cos 30 value will be what? Root 3 by 2. If you take a minus here, cos minus 30, root 3 by 2 is present here. Means if it comes to fourth quadrant, 1-1s will be disturbed. It will be no more 1-1. If it comes to fourth quadrant. Therefore, this is the LOC. And let me take another example. Cos. If you take 240 degree, where the 240 degree comes in the third quadrant. You can write as cos 180 degree plus 60 degree. Observe, comes in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant, except tan and cot are rest are negative, you will get minus value. And you will get a cos 60 only. Cos 60 value is what? Minus 1 by 2. Minus 1 by 2. Cos minus 240. Cos 240 becomes minus 1 by 2. And what is cos 30 is? Cos 30 is minus 1 by 2. Cos 240 also becomes minus 1 by 2. Means if it comes to the third quadrant and fourth quadrant, it will lose its 1-1s. When it is not 1-1, it inverse cos function does not exist. Therefore, area in which you can define restriction should be done in first and second. These are line of control. You cannot, cos cannot be 1-1 if it comes in the third quadrant and fourth quadrant. Therefore, you can define if cos theta is equal to k, right? Inverse cos theta. Now let us write the definition of inverse cos function. If cos theta is equal to k, right? Inverse cosine function. Inverse cosine function is represented as cos inverse and exists IFF, if and only if, where the theta should lie. What is the domain here? Domain is angle, range is the value, right? Theta lies between 0, from 0 means first and second quadrant means 0 to what? Pi. 0 is less than or equal to theta, theta is less than or equal to pi, and the value will be minus 1 is less than or equal to 0 and plus 1. Have you got anywhere minus value? Minus 1. I think 0 to, what is cos 0? Cos 0 is plus 1. What is cos pi? Minus 1. What is cos 180 degree? Cos 180 degree can be written as cos 180 plus 0. Observe. Cos 180 will be plus 0 will be what? Minus. You will get cos 0. Then cos value becomes minus 1. Lowest value will be 1. Minus 1. Highest value of k is 1. Remember, first step in learning inverse trigonometric function is restriction. Why you are restricting? If you do not restrict it, it will be no more 1, 1 and on 2. To make it 1, 1 and on 2, you have to restrict the domain and the range. I hope you understood now. Why these conditions are given? Note, if cos theta is equal to k, inverse cosine function is represented as cos inverse and exists. Otherwise, it will not exist. Only if and only if the domain lies between 0 to pi and range lies between minus 1 to plus 1, what happens I have shown you. No problem in second quadrant, but a sine has got problem in second quadrant. But problem comes when you take the cosine ratio in third quadrant. You observed 240 degree. Cos 240 degree is minus 1 by 2. Already you have cos 120 is equal to minus 1 by root 2. Cos 240 also becomes minus 1 by root 2. Means it will lose its 1, 1 if it enters into fourth quadrant. You can observe fourth quadrant. Cos minus theta In the fourth quadrant, cos and sec are positive. Therefore, cos minus theta will be cos theta. That will be root 3 by 2. That is cos minus 30 degrees is equal to root 3 by 2. Cos minus 45 degrees is equal to 1 by root 2. Means same angles will repeat. Therefore, we cannot enter. This diagram will help you. It exists if and only if it lies between 0 to pi. This is the basic concept you have to understand before entering into learning inverse trigonometric function. Okay. Continue. Tan theta. Now let us check how to define tan theta and under what condition tan theta exists. When a tan theta will take tan theta is equal to k, trigonometric function. I will write again domain and codomain. We'll take few values. We'll take few values of domain. We'll take few values of codomain. Then you can understand the restrictions. This is theta, tan function. Okay, this is r, real number. You know the value of tan 0 degree. Recall standard angles. Tan 0 degree is 0 degree. Tan 30 degree. Tell me the value of tan 30 degree. 1 by root 3. Okay. Tan 45 degree is equal to what? 1. Now we'll take a tan 60 degree. Tan 60 degree is equal to root 3 by 2. Root 3 only. Tan 60. Root 3. Then you have tan 90 degree. Tan 90 degree is undefined. Then we'll move on to second quadrant. Now, ASTC rule. Remember this. Allied angles, standard angles are must. Now we'll move on to second quadrant. Second quadrant, if I take tan 120 degree, tell me what happens. Tan 120 degree, tan you can write as 180 minus theta. Therefore, I told you that standard angles and allied angles are very much required to understand inverse trigonometric function. ನಿಮಗೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಇಯರ್ನಾಗ ಇದ್ದು ಅಲೈಡ್ ಆಂಗಲ್ಸ್ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಹೆಂಗೆ ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಕನ್ಫ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕತ್ತದ. ಈಗ ನೋಡ್ರಿ, ನಾನು 120 ಡಿಗ್ರಿ ತಗೋತೀನಿ, ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಈಗ tan 180 minus theta means already we discussed in the last class even multiple of 90 degree second quadrant. In the second quadrant is of what? Sine and cosec are positive, rest are negative. Therefore you get minus, okay, minus tan 180 minus 60 minus tan 60 degree, okay, minus tan 60 degree means what do you get? Yes, minus tan 60 degree becomes minus root 3, no problem. For 120 there is no problem, that is minus root 3. If I take cross third quadrant, I will take 240 degree. What happens we will observe now. Tan 240 degree. Okay, tan at 240 degree, what do you get here? Tan 240 degree, tan 180, so 180 plus 60 degree. Calculate, try to get the value of tan 240 degree. Tan 135 degree, can take tan 150 degree. Or even you can take tan minus 30 degree, tan minus 45 degree. If you take a tan minus 30 degree, tan you can take 240 degree, calculate the tan 135 degree, 135 degree, that is tan 180 180 minus tan 180 minus, yes, tell me, 45 degree. Second quadrant. You will get minus tan 45 degree. No doubt you will get minus 1. If I take directly 180, what happens to tan 180 degree? What is tan minus 135 degree? Minus, 135 degree. Its value is minus 1. Okay. What is tan 180 degree? Tan 180 degree, you can write it as a tan 180 minus 0 ಬರೆದ್ರು ಬರ್ತದ plus 0 ಬರೆದ್ರು ಬರ್ತದ. Tan 180 minus 0 is minus tan 0. Minus tan 0 is minus 0 becomes 0. And in case of 180 degree, what you get is 0. Now for a tan 0, even it is negative for other values, tan 0, it will lose its 1-1s. Therefore, the restricted area is when it comes to the second quadrant. When it comes to the third quadrant, problem comes. I will take the third quadrant also. What do you get? Tan 180 plus 60. You get what? In the third quadrant, tan is positive. You get a tan 60 degree. Tan 60 degree is root 3. Observe. When a tan 60 is root 3, 240 is root 3. Root 3. It will not be 1-1. Therefore, the restricted area wherein it cannot be 1-1 is second quadrant and second quadrant and third quadrant. Therefore, again you can define inverse tan function between what? Minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. But it should not be equal to what? 90 degree. Okay? If it becomes 90 degree, the trigonometric function becomes undefined. Okay? You have tried the restrictions for it. I hope you understood the restrictions. Wherein you can define inverse tan function exists. We'll write, suppose that you are asked for 1 mark, inverse tan function. If tan theta is equal to k, we'll write inverse tangent function exists. Inverse tangent function exists is represented as inverse tangent function is represented as tan inverse like this and exists if and only if exists if and only if yes theta lies between what? Range theta lies between what? Minus pi by 2 is less than theta. Theta is less than pi by 2. Why should not take equal to? When the theta becomes equal, right? Tan pi by 2 is infinity, which becomes undefined. And what are the values? What are the values? Yes, tan can have how many values? It should have the values between minus infinity is less than theta, theta is less than infinity. It is not closed open interval. Andre excluding infinity, open interval minus infinity to plus infinity. Here minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. This is open interval, means excluding these two values. Clear to you? Theta lies between minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. So this is the definition of inverse tan function. Similarly, you can go on defining inverse second function, inverse cosecant function. Similarly, all the 6 trigonometries you can define and prepare a table. Right? Remember this table. Inverse trigonometric function, ITF, domain, dome and range. You just define this table. Very important. First one. Sine inverse of Sine inverse of k. K is the value. Then what is the domain for it? Domain becomes what? Value which is -1 is less than or equal to k. K is less than or equal to 1. Range will be what? Range will be generally theta. Angle theta will be here. Here you will have the real number as a domain. What is the range for it? You can expect a sine inverse axis if it lies between -π/2 is less than or equal to theta. Theta is less than or equal to π/2. Second definition will write cos inverse k, where k is a constant, a real number. Domain cos inverse k should have, yes, what is the lowest value? Is it 0 to pi? Cos 0 is less than or equal to k. K is less than or equal to 1. You get the value theta, -1 to +1. Theta lies between 0 is less than or equal to theta. Theta is less than or equal to π/2. Okay, third one. What is tan inverse k? Tan inverse k. Tan inverse k. What is the restriction for it? Restriction is -infinity is less than k. K is less than +infinity. You can even say that it belongs to the real number, any real number except infinity. And range of the angle will be, again you will get -π/2 is less than theta, not equal to theta. Observe π/2. This is less than or equal to means closed interval. We write the closed interval you studied in the square bracket -π/2 to +π/2 will be asked. Domain and range. Okay, and 0 to π/2. Then you have -π/2 to +π/2. Here, in this case, it becomes what? It becomes what? -π/2 to +π/2. These are the identities. That is the definition of the three trigonometric functions. Inverse trigonometric functions we will discuss in the next class. I will prove some sets here. Some identities based on sine inverse, cos inverse, or tan inverse. Okay, then we will define inverse. Otherwise, we will get confused. I hope it is clear now. What is the domain and range of the sine inverse function? Is a range is -π/2 to +π/2. The interval is closed, and the value should lie between -1 and +1. Inverse cosine function exists if the range is lies between 0 to 90. 0 to pi. Cos inverse k lies between 0 to pi. 0 to pi. Means you can remember by the diagram. Don't mix up. For sine inverse, it can be in the first and fourth quadrant. Means -90. This is -π/2. This is π/2. This is 0, pi. Then cos inverse exists. See, it will its area wherein it can become 1 and onto is 0 to pi, because cos 0 is 0, cos pi is -1. Its value lie between. Cos 0 is 1, cos pi is -1. Its value lies between -1 and +1. And inverse tan function value may be any real number, and value will be -π/2 to +π/2. I hope you understood. First, in the first round, we will define three inverse, sine inverse function, cos inverse function. Similarly, this is for cos inverse. Similarly, tan inverse will be true only if it lies in minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2, excluding pi by 2 minus pi by 2 becomes, the moment is, it becomes pi by 2, it will become what? It will become infinity. Are you getting me? Okay. Before I continue with inverse, first you make these three perfect today, and I want to discuss you some important things like principal value of the some important note you remember. Many students, beginners of sine inverse function, they consider it as, I have seen in the paper while checking in my service of 27 years, say some students will consider it as sine inverse x is equal to like a raised to minus k is equal to 1 upon a raised to k. They will try to take it as 1 upon sine x. It is perfectly wrong. Wrong conception. This is wrong conception. This particular, don't misunderstand, this is not raised to minus 1 like in arithmetic. A raised to minus k is equal to 1 upon a raised to k. Even many students argued with me. See, this only represents its inverse. Inverse meaning this particular minus 1 represents inverse. It has no other things. That you remember. And clearly remember domain and codomain, domain and range. You have to correctly understand. I hope by this time you must understand the three things. That is sine inverse we defined, cos inverse we defined, tan inverse we defined. And important thing comes is, generally in an inverse trigonometric function we talk of principal values. Principal value. What is the principal value? Look at here. Suppose that I take, you must know the reverse things here. Now tell me what is sine inverse 1 by 2? It is the inverse. Some examples we'll take here. What is sine inverse 1 by 2? Now, in this case, you studied what is sine 30, standard angles you studied. In inverse function, you have to take sine inverse 1 by 2. Means, for what angle theta, you get 1 by 2. You can get 1 by 2. For what angle? You can get for 30 degree. Sine 30 degree is 1 by 2. Right? And in the restriction, minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. Any other values? No other values. Or you can take it as pi by 6. At the same time, you can write the value. What is the value of sine inverse root 3 by 2? Root 3 by 2. Right? Root 3 by 2. For what angle of the sine, you get root 3 by 2. That you must know 60 degree. 60 degree can be written as pi by 3. What is the value of cos inverse 1 by root 2? For what angle of the cos, you get 1 by root 2. Yes, 1 by root 2. Cos inverse 1 by root 2. Yes. In the restriction of the domain and codomain, where it tries 0 to pi, you can take the values. Cos 0 to cos pi. Cos inverse 1 by root 2. Yes. Cos inverse 1 by root 2 is, yes, 45 degree, which is equal to pi by 4. 45 degree, pi by 4. Yes. Yes. And like this, you must try to get the values. Based on this, we will prove some identities, sets of relations, trigonometric relations or identities, inverse trigonometric relations. Inverse trigonometric relations, trigonometric relations. In that first set, we'll take now set 1. Set 1, you can start with set 1 now. Sine inverse of first set. Sine inverse of sine theta is equal to theta. Sine inverse of sine theta is equal to theta if and only if theta lies between minus pi by 2 is less than or equal to theta, theta is less than or equal to pi by 2. Sine inverse of sine theta. Let us prove this result. Identity. Proof. How can you prove this? Suppose that you are asked for 1 mark. Sine inverse of sine theta is equal to theta. How can you prove this? Remember, you know that sine inverse of any value k, if it is theta, what does it imply? It will imply if the restriction is satisfied, sine theta is equal to k. Similarly, you have here in place of k, what you have here? Sine inverse of k, right? Sine inverse of k is equal to theta. Then you can write that sine inverse of k is equal to theta. Then how can you write it? What is sine theta is equal to k? Okay, let us assume that let sine inverse of sine theta be equal to some value k. Are you getting me? By using the definition of inverse sine function, already restriction is on. How can you write it? You can write it as sine theta, this theta in place of this particular value k, sine inverse of k is equal to theta, right? You will get here sine k. You can write it as sine theta is equal to sine k. That implies sine eliminates. You can take theta is equal to k. Call it as equation number 1. Call it as equation number 2. From 1 and 2, what is the k is? K is theta. Therefore, you can write it as sine inverse of sine theta is equal to, in place of k, you can write theta. This is the first identity. Similarly, you can write in the first set, this is say A, you take B. Now you try to prove similarly. Prove that cos inverse of cos theta is equal to theta, provided theta lies between 0 to pi. You prove similarly. You prove similarly. Let cos inverse of cos theta be equal to k. Means by definition of inverse trigonometric function, you can take that cos theta is equal to cos k. Then the theta becomes equal to what? K. Call it as 1. Call it as equation number 2. You can write it as cos inverse of cos theta is equal to what? Theta only. Similarly, you can directly write the third result. C, that is tan inverse of tan theta is equal to theta only, provided theta lies between minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. This is one set on sine inverse function, right? I will take the reciprocals in the next class. Similarly, I will take another set of results. Set 2. We'll extend it to inverse. Set 2. Prove that in that first one, sine of Sine inverse x is equal to x only, or sine inverse of sine inverse x is equal to x only, provided x lies between -1 to +1. Try them. Second one, cos inverse x is equal to x, provided x lies between what? -1 to +1. Third one, tan inverse x is equal to x, provided x belongs to a real number, or even you can write it as x is a real number. -infinity is less than x, x is less than infinity. Instead of writing this, you can directly write as x belongs to the real number. Okay, I will give some examples on this. Try to solve. Sine inverse root 3. Some examples on this I will solve. Find sine inverse root 3. Sine inverse root 3. Sine inverse of root 3 is equal to what? Try to find out. What is the value? Find the value of sine inverse root 3. Can you write root 3? What is the restriction? Restriction for this x should lie between -1 and +1. What is the value of root 3? What is the value of root 3? Think and tell me. What is the value of root 3? See, root 3, it should lie between -1 and +1. Value of root 3 is 1.75, means greater than 1. Answer baribeku is not equal to root 3, because x should lie between what? -1 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 1. Sine inverse root 3 does not exist. Clear it to you? Here is a problem from your textbook. Now let us see how many of you solve this. Sine inverse of sine 2 pi by 3. Take another example from your textbook. Sine inverse of sine 2 pi by 3 value. Now tell me what is 2 pi by 3. 2 pi by 3. Pi by 3 means 60. 62 is 120. That is sine inverse. You know that sine inverse of sine theta exists, provided theta lies between -pi by 2 is less than theta. Theta is less than pi by 2. Therefore, value does not exist. Does not exist. You have to observe carefully. They will intentionally give you sine inverse of sine inverse root 3. See, sine value cannot be equal to root 3 because restriction is -1 to +1. Here you observe. The value should lie between -5 to -90 in the less than or equal to, it should be +90 ಒಳಗಿರಬೇಕು. ಈಗ ನೋಡ್ರಿ ಮಜಾ. Sine inverse of sine 2 pi by 3. What is 2 pi by 3? Pi by 3 is 60, 120 degree. Can I write sine inverse of sine 120 degree is equal to 120 degree? No, because angle restriction is what? -90 to +90. Then how to bring it? Now you can use allied angle. That is sine inverse of, you can write it as sine 120 can be written as 180 minus 60. In which quadrant it is? It is in the second quadrant. Therefore, you can write as sine inverse of 180 minus theta. Second quadrant, ASTC rule. ASTC rule, carefully learn. It is not an easy chapter, my dear students. You must be very careful. Many students, sin inverse of sin 120, they will directly write 120. They will not learn this restriction. That I observed in my 27 years. Every year students do this mistake. Why it should be brought within this range. Which range? 120. 120 is in second quadrant. Second quadrant is invalid. Inverse function is invalid. But using allied angle, you can bring it to the value, that is sine of 180 minus 60. Second quadrant, sine is positive. Therefore, you can write as sine 60 degree. As the values are given in radian measure, sine inverse of sine 60 degree can be written as pi by 3. Now the answer becomes what? Pi by 3. I hope you understood. Now pi by 3 means 60 degree, lies between minus 90 and plus 90. Therefore, even though the values are given, you can bring them by using allied angle. Therefore, I told you, allied angles are required to learn this particular chapter. Clearer? Observe few questions on this. I will give you some problems from your textbook. Solve these set. I will give you some 5 minutes. Try to find out. Tan inverse of tan 3 pi by 4. Try this. Question number 4. Cos inverse of cos 7 pi by 6. Try this. Fifth one, cos inverse of, note down, cos 13 pi by 6. Sixth one, try this. Cos inverse of cos 45 degree. Seventh one. Note down all these questions, practice them. Cos inverse of cos 225 degree. Try these today. Try to solve them. Inverse trigonometric function, provided the restriction, you have to remember correctly. What is the restriction for tan inverse? Tan inverse x. Can you write the tan inverse of tan x is equal to x only? What is the restriction for the angle theta? It is in the form of tan inverse tan theta. Theta should lie between what? If I take this one, theta should lie between what? Theta should lie between minus pi by 2 is less than theta, theta is less than pi by 2. Keeping this in mind, 3 pi by 4 becomes what? Tan inverse. I will take the third one. You can try remaining. Right? Tan inverse of tan 3 pi by 4. Pi by 4 is 45. 45 3 is a 135 degree. Is 135 degree lies in minus 90 to plus 90. Observe. No. Then what you can do? You can do tan inverse of tan S 180 minus 45 degree. You can bring. Now you can write it as tan inverse of, what is tan 180 minus theta? Second quadrant, ASTC rule. In the second quadrant, what about tan and cot? Tan and cot are negative, therefore you can write it as minus tan getting. Yes, good morning. Okay, Saurabh. Okay, minus tan 45 degree. Observe carefully. Tan 180 minus theta, second quadrant will be minus tan 45 degree. Now, you cannot, you have to express the tan inverse of tan x. You know that tan minus theta you studied in the first year allied angle is minus tan theta. Therefore, whenever there is minus tan theta, can I write it as tan minus theta? Now I get tan inverse tan minus 45 degree. Right? Now observe tan inverse of tan. In the radian measure, you can write as minus 5/4 as the question is minus 5/4. Now, is minus 5/4 minus 45 degree right in the restriction? Yes, restricted area. Then you can write the correct answer as minus 45 degree or minus 5/4 degree. I have seen many students tan inverse of tan 135 degree. Or kaltirtara tan inverse of tan theta is theta. Theta ಬೇಕಾದಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಉತ್ತರ ಬರೆದು ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ 135 degree. Wrong answer, because restriction for tan is minus 92 plus 90. Then how to bring it? How to bring it within the restriction limit? Then we used allied angle. Therefore, I told you, you have to learn allied angle, standard angles correctly to answer the questions. Okay, next one. Tan 180 minus theta is minus tan theta. Allied angle minus tan theta can be done as tan minus theta. Therefore, tan inverse of tan minus 5/4 is minus 45 degree. It lies in the limit only. Therefore, the correct answer. I hope you understood tan inverse of tan function. Okay. Try cos inverse of cos 7 pi by 6. Take the second problem. Let us see. That is cos inverse of cos 7 pi by 6. Cos 7 by 6 pi by 6. Observe cos 7 pi by 6. Pi by 6 means 30 degree. Means you get what? 210 degree. What is the restriction for cos inverse angle? Angle should lie between 0 to pi. Then no problem. Now observe what you have here. Cos inverse of, ನೋಡ್ರಿ pi by 6 ಅಂದ್ರೆ 30 degree. 37s are 210 degree. Now 210 degree comes in what? What is the restricted area for defining angle? Range should lie between what? 0 to pi. Therefore, now 210 degree lies in which quadrant? Third quadrant. You have to bring it back to what? Back to second quadrant by using the identity. How can you use the identity? Which identity you can use? Yes, cos inverse of cos. Can I write it as? How can I write it as? Yes, 180 plus 30 degree. Can I write as 180 plus 30 degree? 210. Then what do you get here? You will get cos inverse of here. Cos in the second quadrant will be even multiple. Cos remains cos 30 degree. In the third quadrant, cos is negative. Therefore, you get minus cos 30 degree. Then what is cos minus theta? You studied cos minus theta becomes what? What is cos minus theta? Now, you have minus cos 30 degree. Sin minus theta is minus sin theta. What is cos minus theta? Tell me. When the cos will be negative, in the second quadrant it is negative. When I take pi minus theta, 180 minus theta, you can get minus cos theta. Do you agree with me? Minus cos theta. Then can I write it as cos inverse of minus cos theta second quadrant? Can I write as cos pi minus pi means what? 180 degree minus 30 degree. Do you agree with me now? Now we'll get a cos inverse cos of what is 180 minus 30? 180 minus 30 is 150 degree. Is 150 degree in the limit? Yes, 0 to 180. 150 degree comes now. Therefore, you can write it as 150 degree. 150 degree converted as 5 pi by 6. 35 is 150. Now 150 comes in the principal value. See, in the restriction, if any value, lowest value of a particular function is called as principal value, means where that particular inverse function can be defined. Actually, it was in the third quadrant by using identities, that is trigonometric identities, allied angles. We brought it back to what? Second quadrant. This is the first step, my dear students, in learning trigonometric function. Okay, it is getting late to your college now. I have to stop. We'll meet tomorrow to continue with the study of the organic chemistry. Right? Till then, bye bye. See you.